God's chosen ones. God is funding your life now, and it won't make sense to others. This isn't another money blessing promise. This is heaven's audit, and your name just cleared. They said you were broke. They looked at your bank account and saw failure. But God saw obedience in secret, faith under fire, seed in famine. You weren't skipped. You were stored. And now, the release has been approved. Type 777. If your spirit just whispered, "That's for me," sing. You gave when you didn't have it. You sent money to family you didn't even hear back from. You tithed when you were behind on rent. You helped that friend who never returned the favor. You covered that stranger's meal and went home to eat cereal in silence. You didn't call it sowing, you just called it love, but heaven called it seed. And while the world clapped for loud giving, God was watching the quiet ones, the hidden givers, the ones who gave with trembling hands and tear-filled eyes, the ones who whispered, "God, I trust you even if this sets me back." You were never just broke. You were being proven, and what looked like lack was actually a test of trust, an audit of character. Because God doesn't fund ego, He funds integrity. He doesn't release wealth for applause. He releases wealth for assignment. If you've been feeling like your provision has been delayed, if you've cried behind closed doors, wondering if you missed your moment, let me say this plainly. Chosen one, you weren't denied. You were being delayed for divine reasons. And now, your season of release is here. Part 1. You were being led, even when it looked like lack. You thought you missed it. That opportunity, that breakthrough, that moment that could have changed everything. You watched others move ahead, sign contracts, buy homes, start businesses, while you stayed stuck, silent, still tithing, still giving, still waiting. You wondered, did I take a wrong turn? Did I mishear God? Was I supposed to say yes when I said no? But what you didn't see was that you weren't standing still. You were being led. You weren't abandoned. You were being escorted down a path that only the chosen walk, a path that doesn't make sense until the very end. He told you to sow when all you had left was rent money. He told you to forgive when they never apologized. He told you to stay when everything in you wanted to run. And though it looked like delay, though it felt like punishment, it was none of those things. It was God quietly rerouting you away from counterfeit blessings and into covenant ones. So, because the truth is, if you had received what you thought you wanted back then, you would have lost it trying to keep it. So God didn't just delay the blessing, He delayed you so your character could catch up to your calling. That's what it looks like for the chosen. It looks like losing first, like last-minute extensions, like being skipped over until heaven says now. And maybe you're still there now, still stretching $20 across 10 days, still pretending you're fine when you're quietly breaking. But let me tell you something holy. God never forgot your faithfulness. He never missed your quiet obedience. He never once overlooked that moment when you said yes, even though it cost you everything. That moment wasn't a mistake. That was the moment the shift began. You didn't miss the blessing. You became the blessing. You weren't behind. You were being prepared to carry more than just money. You were being trained to carry mantle. So don't look at the lack. Look at the leadings. Look at what God had to pry from your hand so He could place the real thing in it. You weren't wandering. You were walking a path only the chosen ones recognize. Part 2. The promise is still active. Heaven has no inflation. There were nights you stared at the ceiling, whispers in your spirit saying, "But didn't you say you'd provide?" You remembered the verse, Philippians 4:9-15. My God shall supply all your need. But your fridge was half empty, your phone bill overdue, your smile a little more forced than usual. You wondered, did I misunderstand the promise? Was it only for the faithful? Was I not good enough to receive it? But hear this. beloved. God's word never expires. It's not attached to the economy. It doesn't rise with interest rates or fall with stock markets. Heaven doesn't operate in lack. Heaven doesn't participate in recessions. Heaven has no inflation. You're not running out. You're being taught what it means to trust God, not just for what's possible, but for what looks impossible. Do you remember the widow in Zarephath? One last meal, one last handful of flour, and God turned it into days of divine multiplication. You remember the fish and the loaves, just enough for one lunch, until Jesus blessed it, and suddenly there was more than enough. That's how heaven works. It doesn't need more. It just needs your trust. God's promise to provide has not been canceled. It's not paused. It's not on back order. It's active right now. But here's the part they don't preach often. Before God fills your hands, He inspects your heart, because blessing without surrender is dangerous. Provision without alignment is wasteful. But for the chosen ones, provision comes wrapped in purpose. That's why He waited. That's why it took so long. Because He wasn't just sending money. He was sending mission, and He needed to make sure you wouldn't forget the giver. Once you received the gift, you weren't being denied. You were being entrusted. Heaven doesn't forget to fulfill its promises, but it does wait until you're ready to receive without being ruined. So breathe. The same God who fed Elijah by ravens, who rained manna from heaven, who filled empty jars with oil that never stopped flowing. That God has not changed. His word still stands. His hand still moves. His provision is still on the way, and it will come, pressed down, shaken together, running over, not because of your effort, but because of His everlasting promise. The blessing isn't late. It's landing right on heaven's time. Part 3. You're not just getting wealth, you're becoming it. You thought the blessing would show up in your bank account, but heaven was trying to show up in you, because wealth isn't something you receive. It's something you become, and chosen one. You've been becoming it this whole time. Every time you gave when it hurt, you broke the spirit of poverty. Every time you praised through empty cupboards, you rewrote a generational pattern. Every time you stayed generous, even when you were barely getting by, you activated something divine inside you, and no one saw it. But God did. You see, the world teaches you that wealth starts with money, but the kingdom knows it starts with identity. You had to unlearn the language of lack, the guilt of rest, the fear that said you'll never have enough. You had to release the version of you that equated blessing with striving and success with burnout, because true wealth doesn't show up first in your wallet. It shows up in your walk. The quiet confidence, the unshakable peace, the refusal to chase what heaven already said is yours. You've already become the kind of person God can trust with more, not because you played it perfect, but because you surrendered when no one else would have blamed you for quitting. This isn't about houses or brands or balance sheets. This is about kingdom currency, and your currency: obedience, integrity, surrender, peace, joy, even when nothing made sense. You didn't wait to become wealthy. You chose to become whole. And that's the kind of wealth that never runs dry. That's the kind of wealth that multiplies when touched. That's why God is about to release what's been stored, not because you begged for it, but because you became it. You won't just spend money, you'll steward legacy. You won't just buy land, you'll occupy territory. You won't just increase, you'll multiply what heaven planted in you, because you were never called to chase the blessing, you were called to embody it. You're not just getting wealth, you're becoming the answer to someone else's prayer. Part 4. God is aligning the right people and the right portals. There are names being spoken in rooms you haven't entered yet, and one of them is yours. You don't even know it, but heaven has been whispering your name into the ears of the right people. Not just people with money, but people with mission, people with reach, people with keys, For months now, maybe even years, you've been feeling something stir, but nothing seemed to shift. No doors opened, no opportunities landed. You wondered, am I invisible? Did God forget? Did I mishear the promise? But what you didn't see was that God was working underground, building connections, moving people, softening hearts, positioning allies. And to the delay, it wasn't punishment. It was divine orchestration, because you weren't meant to beg for access. You were meant to be recognized. And now, the right eyes are landing on your gift, not the ones who would have used it, not the ones who would have drained you, but the ones who've been assigned to help you rise. There's someone coming, a gatekeeper of sorts, who carries what you need to get to where God called you. It won't be forceful. It won't be manipulative. It will feel like alignment. Because when heaven sends help, it doesn't arrive with chaos. It arrives with confirmation. You won't have to beg for a meeting. You won't have to elbow your way into the room. You won't have to prove your worth. They'll see it because God has been preparing them to make space for you, just like He's been preparing you to walk in without shrinking. Some of you are about to receive calls out of nowhere, emails that feel surreal, divine meetings that seem accidental but aren't, because the portals are opening. And these aren't just doors, they are prophetic intersections, gateways into realms you didn't think you qualified for. But heaven says you're overqualified because of the fire you passed through. Don't downplay your preparation. Don't second-guess your readiness. You are not an interruption. You are the assignment they've been praying to find. So when the door opens, walk through it. And when the right hand reaches out, receive it. Because God is not just sending money, He's sending movement, not just favor, alignment, not just a helper, but someone who heard your name in the secret place. And when they say, we've been waiting for someone like you, you'll finally understand. It wasn't just a delay, it was divine timing. It was you they were being prepared for. Part 5. The recovery is real and it's double portioned. You didn't just lose money, you lost time, energy, trust. You lost people you thought would be with you for life. And the worst part, it wasn't stolen overnight, it drained slowly, quietly. While you were still trying to help everybody else stay afloat, you smiled through losses no one saw. You served while bleeding. You worshipped while wondering how to pay for gas. But now, heaven is ready to repay. This is the part no one warned you about. Divine compensation. God doesn't just restore what was lost, He restores it better. He doesn't just return what was taken, He multiplies it because you endured without compromise. Remember Job. He lost everything, his wealth, his children, his reputation. And when God restored him, it didn't come back the same. It came back doubled. And God is no respecter of persons. What He did for Job, He's about to do for you. But here's the part the soul needs to hear. Your loss wasn't wasted. Every tear watered the future you're about to walk into. Your obedience wasn't ignored. Every time you gave while grieving, every time you praised while empty, every act of integrity in the dark was recorded. Heaven saw what people skipped. They saw the job you didn't get because you wouldn't lie, the client you lost because you wouldn't compromise, the friendship you released because peace cost more than loyalty. And now, God is about to reward you publicly for what you did privately. You're not just going to get back what was lost. You're going to get back what was promised plus interest. Double doors, double favor, double confirmation, double resources for the mission ahead. Because this isn't just restoration, it's redemption. It's reversal. It's repayment from the courts of heaven. You passed the test of silence. You passed the test of scarcity. Now, the vault is open. And what's being returned? Peace that makes sense this time. Wealth that won't break you. Love that won't leave. And time redeemed. Not wasted. God is restoring what the enemy tried to convince you would never come back. but not as it was, as it always should have been. And this time, you will be ready, because you didn't just survive the loss. You became worthy of the double. You were never empty. You were being prepared for overflow. You didn't just make it through, you made it through with your soul still intact. And heaven took note. While others were being seen, you were being shaped. While others were building platforms, you were building altars. While others were chasing money, you were learning to steward the presence. That's why this release won't feel like a transaction. It will feel like a reunion, a sacred returning, a divine repayment with God's fingerprints on every detail. Because this isn't just about provision. It's about proof. Proof that God saw you when no one else did. Proof that obedience in silence still moves angels. Proof that you were never forgotten. You weren't skipped. You were set apart. You weren't left behind. You were being led higher. And now, heaven's time and your obedience have collided. So what do you do now? You walk differently. You pray boldly. You receive fully. You stop asking, God, when? And start declaring, God, thank you. I'm ready. Because what's coming isn't just a check. It's a chapter. It's a confirmation. It's kingdom-backed provision tied to your assignment. You're not just called. You're trusted. You didn't break. You broke through. You're not chasing wealth. You've become a carrier of heaven's economy. You were chosen. You still are. You always were. If this word was for you, if something in your spirit stirred, if the tears came before you could explain why, comment 777 below. Not just as a sign, but as a seal, a signal to heaven that you believe again, that you're ready to receive again. Share this with someone whose hands are still trembling, but whose faith is still standing. Because this time, the blessing isn't just coming, it's coming through you.